Global finance is being reshaped, and it is powered by digital infrastructure that never sleeps. On Interconnected, a new podcast by Equinix that explores the hidden infrastructure behind our connected future, they lay out the trends that make tomorrow's banking system possible. Project Liberty Institute CEO Sheila Warren, Wormhole Foundation co-founder Dan Reeser, and Gauntlet CTO and co-founder Ri Chiang explore the ongoing progress of decentralized finance. Listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from our massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Super short intro this week because our cloud news and AI trend clocks in at a whopping 48 minutes this month. I was traveling during the recording this time, but Brian and Brandon did an excellent job, as always, covering everything. With that, I'll quit talking and we'll get right to it right after this short break.
Today's show is brought to you by TestCube. Testing applications in Kubernetes doesn't have to be complicated. TestCube is your go-to platform for cloud-native continuous testing. With TestCube, you can orchestrate, scale, and automate tests effortlessly right within Kubernetes, catching issues early and deploying with confidence. Try it out today and see why engineering teams trust TestCube to keep their testing simple and scalable. Your tests, your tools, your infrastructure, finally together. Check it out at testcube.io/cloudcast. And we're back. And folks, it is great to be with you for another AI and Cloud Trends for October 2025. Brandon Whichard, great to have you back. Aaron is not joining us today. He is doing either some sort of traveling or some sort of Halloweening. I'm not sure, but we don't need him. We don't need him. The two of you can, the two of I can kind of get through. I'm worried though. I feel like we have so much non-tech stuff to cover that this either could be like a 2-hour show or it could be like 15 minutes of tech stuff and 35 minutes of other stuff. So let's begin where everybody wants to begin. College football thoughts, right? So for context, we're recording this on October 31st, so Halloween of 2025. Right now, college football is in a complete nightmare because Disney is decided to hold it hostage. But by the time the show comes out next week, that might not be hostage anymore. So let's talk just general college football. We are now full into coach firing season. Do you have any thoughts on kind of where the college football season is right now, whether it's teams not being good or coach firing or anything in general?
Well, it's a great time of the season because at this point, we sort of have some teams that are doing really well, right? We have some teams that have the opportunity to do great. They haven't done some great, but they're still in it. And then we have some teams that have cratered so poorly that they're imploding in front of us, resulting in many coaches being fired. And I was thinking to myself, how is this related to AI? And I was thinking specifically about Sam Altman and the news that over this past month that they've had numerous announcements, but most importantly, they are now officially, if you will, worked out, not a nonprofit. They figured out all the legal issues around it. So now they're a regular for-profit company. And what is going to happen is they're ultimately going to go, here, early 2026 prediction, they're going to go public sometime next year. And I was thinking this relates to like college football because what happens in college football when your team hires a new coach is like you have incredible expectations, right? You're like, this is the person. And in the case of LSU, you give them a 10-year contract worth like $90 million and you guaranteed it all, right? And it only ends of one of two ways. Either you're Nick Saban in Alabama, you hire him, he goes on to win like 5 national championships, considered the greatest coach of all time, and everybody loves him and it's great. Or in the case of LSU, in the middle of the season, you get crushed by a team, Texas A&M in this case. The stadium empties out. The fans hate you. The governor gets involved, fires you, and then fires your boss, and it ends in just a massive implosion. And I'm thinking to myself, this is what OpenAI is. It's like with this final thing, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. They launched a million different things this month and they cleaned up their legal structure. It's like we've hired on our coach now. And in this case, it's not $90 million. It's like $1 trillion. And it's like, it's going to work out. He's going to make us $1 trillion. All we see is optimism now. And in a few years, this will either be like, he's the greatest business person of all time, and they were geniuses for doing this, or this is going to end so badly that it won't even be a governor. It may be multiple heads of state get involved and talking about how poorly this went. So that's kind of my framing for this month. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant because it is literally, I don't want to say life and death, but feels like life and death for a lot of people. It is going to involve more parts of your life than you thought it was going to involve. Like in the case of AI, like your electrical bill is probably going to go up, even though you don't run a data center. I think it's fantastic. I'll tie this to something else that's not college football related. I had a work event this week, and right next to me was another event going on. So it was, big hotel, multiple events going on. This one was car dealerships. And I thought, okay, well, whatever. It's just, car dealerships doing their thing. Everything on the agenda was AI related. So this was like literal car dealers, like guys who own, Steve Smith's Chevrolet of, Fayetteville, showing up and learning, how AI was going to impact him. And what was really interesting was I was talking to these guys kind of in the hallway and what was going on. And it told me two things. Number one, there was all these panels of dealer owners. They were starting to realize, because they had apparently given ChatGPT to every single one of their salespeople, to like everybody in the store, because they were like, this is our way. We're going to train it. We're going to train people. They're going to learn how to ChatGPT is going to build them like a set of like question and answers to deal with sales things. And they were like, man, we're starting to realize that stuff's pretty expensive when you give it to everybody, and it's $20 a month. And I was like, well, that partially explains why they have 800 million people allegedly using the thing. But my favorite one was one of the guys we were talking, and he said, oh, what do you do? And I said, I work on computer stuff. And he said, yeah, I hate being the guy who has to, do computer stuff, and Thanksgiving's coming up, and I'm going to have to inevitably, fix somebody's computer. And he said, but I got an idea. I'm going to put ChatGPT on my mother-in-law's and my grandmother's phone, because then they can just ask ChatGPT how to fix stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this is where the numbers are coming from. Of all the people using ChatGPT, is they honestly think that their grandmother is going to be like, hey, Billy, I'm getting this funny printer error message. ChatGPT, fix it for me. So yeah, I don't know if that means we're in a bubble, but man, people are like, that thing's just going to do stuff for me. So it's interesting. We are recording this on Halloween. Are you a Halloween person? Are you a Halloween dresser upper? Do you have a lot of kids come to your house? What is Halloween in your world?
I can't say I get dressed up. I just stand at the door, give out the candy, talk to the kids, admire the costumes. In my case, my son's a little bit older now. I think he's outside of the Halloween stuff. So, okay. So I'm playing the nominal dad role. Just like I give out the candy, talk to the kids. That's it. What about you? Are you a festive Halloween person?
No, not at all. It's always was like my least favorite holiday. I mean, as a kid, I loved it because you went out and got candy. As an adult, you're just like, for me, it's like, okay, 5:00, kids start banging on the door. It's not even dark yet, which I don't love that, but they're usually little kids, which means my dog's going to bark at them. I got to deal with the dog barking stuff. You're worried about like, did I get enough candy? Because, at first you're trying to be super generous. You're just throwing candy in these kids' bags. Then later you get the old kids and they're kind of, they're like, man, I don't want licorice. what else do you got in there? and then at some point you're like, I just want to go to bed, or I just want to turn the lights off. And then people are still banging on your door at 9:00, and you're just like, ugh. So yeah, no, I like it. I like seeing the kids. I'll usually have a couple of beers and just kind of watch it go. But no, we don't do the like get dressed up, go to the parties. None of that stuff. I'm past all those things. So. Well, listen, let's jump into it. I feel like, I feel like we have the intersection of two things going on. We've got all of the, this doesn't happen all the time, but all of the cloud providers announce their earnings for the month. We can talk about that. And then, in even bigger news, all of the cloud provider, all of the big AI players announced just gigantic numbers. Just everybody announced gigantic numbers. I want to play this game because we'll go through real quick. Everybody, let's just say this. Everybody's cloud numbers went up, which always happens, but they went up in pretty good ways. So Azure up 40%, GCP up 34%, AWS up 20%. So the highest in a long time. Anything jump out at you there in terms of those numbers? I think the AWS number above 15% is the thing that's kind of getting everybody's attention right now.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing that jumps out to me is really this, because I think we talk about this all the time. It's like how much of this AI stuff is real. And I do kind of feel like at this point, And most of these cloud vendors are basically saying they have some type of backlog, right? They are capacity constrained, meaning they don't have enough GPUs, right? To, if you will, service all the workloads. So, I'm always kind of skeptical. I'm like, what are people really doing, and how much is it being used in like the quote unquote real world? But like these numbers really do kind of indicate that like maybe it's just a bunch of like, if you will, proof of concepts, but it's a lot of them. Like there's a lot going on. So at some point, I think it's like we're starting to see, because we've talked about this a lot on the show, right? It's like, okay, NVIDIA is making a lot of money. And of course, OpenAI is raising a lot of money, but the cloud providers, it seems like they're spending it, and they are going to spend a lot. I guess that's the other side of this. They all announced like incredible CapEx spending forecasts, like more money than we've ever seen before. But we are actually starting to see the revenue show up now. So for those of us that are sort of like, is it a bubble? Is it not? It's like, this is an indication of like, okay, end users, right? Or in this case, end businesses are buying something. So that was kind of my biggest takeaway. It's like we're actually seeing the revenue for AI materialize in the cloud vendors. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm super curious for someone to start doing some like decent sort of forensic accounting of this stuff, because you look at this and you go, okay, Azure grew some. Okay, Azure growing is most likely going to be mostly OpenAI growing, because that's still kind of their workhorse. GCP growing, I think, is the most interesting one to me, because I feel like GCP has the most control over their destiny, right? Like they obviously have so many, they have access to so many sort of accelerator chips, the TPUs, that they're not only growing their own business, right? And they're growing ad business and they're growing the YouTube business, but they're able to, sell off, TPUs to folks like Anthropic and stuff. So I kind of feel like GCP is the one that, 2 or 3 years ago, we were like, they are in deep shit trouble. And now you're like, they're a $61 billion business, and they're profitable, and they've got excess capacity that they're able to sell off stuff, which nobody else really, really has. So there's that. And then I feel like the other part of it is like, I'm wondering how much of these guys are announcing numbers that are based on these like projections of other stuff coming in, right? Like how many of them are doing the Oracle thing where they're like, oh yeah, we've got this much coming in. I wonder if there's ways that accounting wise they're accounting for this stuff, because I do feel like for all of these big numbers that are being thrown around, 300 billion is being thrown at Oracle, and 150 billion is being thrown at Amazon or at Azure from OpenAI, and you've got Grok doing stuff, and then you've got NVIDIA going, hey, we booked $500 billion worth of orders through 2026, and you're like, well, hold on a second, I don't even know if those numbers all add up. And number two, do you even have the capacity? Like, is there enough capacity in TSMC? Because I don't think it's anywhere else necessarily for you to be able to do that stuff. Like I want to see one of these folks dig into these numbers, because it's, again, whether it's a bubble or it's not a bubble. I mean, it is a bubble. The valuations are gigantic. It's just, bubbles are always just a matter of like, well, how much bigger can it get? So that's its own discussion. But yeah, the numbers do feel like people are just like, look, I'm just going to keep throwing big numbers around in this. At some point it's going to crash, but let's just leverage this as much as we possibly can for as long as we possibly can. Because I don't know.
No, I think you're hitting on like the interesting point. Like, I mean, I think we'd all like to know like quality of revenue, maybe if that's a made up term or not. Like, what are people really doing? Is this revenue likely to repeat? Is it just proof of concepts and stuff like that? But I was just looking at some of the notes here. It was sort of like, AWS says, Trainium 2 is fully subscribed in a multi-billion-dollar business, up 150% quarter over quarter. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, of course, they don't say the exact number, but it's like that's real money, though. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, it's actually counts. And then I think your point about Google, I think we talked about this on the last show. It's kind of interesting. It's like, I think we talked about this in relationship to Oracle more than anything else. It's like, used to be for a long time, AWS being the leader was like, you needed all the services, all like 200 plus AWS services. But Oracle's kind of banking on like, we're just going to provide a bunch of AI stuff, right? And maybe, GCP sort of backed into that. It's like, yeah, like it just turns out we have these really great chips for AI, and it's just one service, if you are conceptually one service. And that's like really easy to sell. You know what I mean? You don't have to have all of the million S3 options at AWS. You just sell as much, if you will, AI capacity as you want. So again, it's like, I think it's, like, I don't know, even we should say optimistic. It's just interesting. It's like the revenue's there, But I think next month, in the previous months after that, we'll probably be asking like, is it still growing? And are these projects going from maybe proof of concept to like production? And now it's just a steady state business. That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how, because again, we're about a month from reInvent, like how AWS tries to spin their, because how they try to spin their AI part of their business, because they didn't really get into any details of it. They just said, hey, we grew. And I think their biggest thing was they wanted to kind of say two things this quarter. They wanted to say, hey, we grew more than 20%. Let's get back into that 20% category, because everybody right now, it feels like they're quote unquote lapping them from a percentage perspective, not necessarily a dollar perspective. And then they wanted to say, yeah, we do AI, but they didn't specifically kind of get into it, so that tells me, okay, either it's not as big as, it's not as big as AWS would expect, you'd expect them to talk about it, or they're like, hold on, I'm going to save it for reInvent, because then I can do it as a visual, and Andy or Matt Garman can stand in front of the screen and have all the logos like they like to do, right? And they can just kind of crank off, and they can go, Ford Motor and Marriott and all these sort of things are using our AI stuff, versus being like, oh no, this is really like Ed Zitron calling them out, going, I heard that your biggest customer is Anthropic with Cursor, which is in and of itself is fine, but it's like, are these guys all really, dealing with like 7 or 8 people? Like, is it
just a few people paying for all this?
Right. Are they all just paying each other for the same sort of circular stuff? So I think that's going to be an interesting spin to see. Because again, Amazon again is the one who, nobody talks about their model, and they don't really have that sort of consumer app that they can go, hey, we have 400 million users of what we're doing, or 800 million users of what we're doing. So, and they
are the most penalized. I mean, they've obviously they have not gotten the market multiple that like Google and Microsoft has. So I think that's like, if you're at the Jeff Bezos, Andy Jassy level, it's like, why aren't we getting the same multiple? Because we should have another, probably to them, they should be worth like another $1 trillion. I know it's crazy. Sometimes when we say these numbers, I hear myself and think it's crazy, but like, that's probably what they're saying to themselves. So, that's part of the whole thing about having good numbers this week. They did a reduction in labor, 14,000 people laid off. So sorry to all the Amazonians that, that's got to be a tough look, right? Your company just did great and you just got the walking papers. So that's a tough message. But I think that's all, my guess is like, this is the narrative that they want. Amazon goes back to the investors with, like, see, we're growing, we've reduced our headcount, and we have this backlog, and, you should adjust your financial model and give us like, 2x or 3x more times multiple, like you gave it to Microsoft. I think it's that simple.
Right. Well, and it's going to be really interesting. I'm sure it's probably too late at this point to adjust the reInvent schedule, but like, I would be very interested to see. There's always the public reInvent schedule, which is always going to be, quote unquote, designed for builders. And I'm sure they're going to be walking them through like, hey, here's how you build an agent in Bedrock, and here's all this, AI. But it'll be really interesting. Like, if I was an executive going to reInvent, I mean, can't the number one question you're asking them go, hey man, I know that Matt and Andy and whoever else, are going to talk about AI tools, but like, connect the dots for me. You just laid off, whatever percentage of your workforce. Like, how'd you do that? Like, I want to know more about, like, I got to imagine that's going to be the biggest executive question that's going to be asked, is like, show me how you did that. Because, in the past, you guys have always been like, here's how you build cloud native apps. Here's how you build scalable stuff. People are going to be like, how did you figure out how to take, 20% of your really smart people, turn them into a process with AI and do that. And I wonder how much of that will be happening, but all, kind of behind closed doors, because.
Well, there was an interesting interview. I don't know if it was on the earnings. I think it was a question that was asked on the earnings call, but they asked that question and Jassy gave the answer. It was seemed pretty sobering, in the sense of, like he said, these weren't really AI related reductions, right? He just basically said that company had gotten very large and he felt like there were too much management, and all the rhetoric you read about is like, this was mostly people at the management layer. So I think this is this is the classic, I don't know, McKinsey, whoever you want. It's sort of like, okay, instead of everyone having 6 reports or 8 reports, everyone's going to have 10 reports or 12 reports, right? And we're going to get rid of a couple layers of management. So this one doesn't really feel, and that was interesting, because I think, I always think when somebody opens the door for an executive to say something like, did you use AI to do this? Like, it's almost like, of course they're going to say it. So it's interesting that he didn't say that. He was like, no, this was more that, because I feel like so many other people, like, they make any type of change, they're like, AI is fixing all this. And I'm like, I don't know. I question that AI was the reason you're doing that. But so that'll be interesting. I mean, again, I'm sure it doesn't make any of these workers feel good who got laid off. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. And also too, we see this with companies all the time. Like they get big and they feel like they're not lean enough, and then they get lean, and then they feel like they're not big enough. And, so it's sort of like the expanding contraction nature of the workforce.
Right. Well, in other numbers that seem really big and sort of out of their mind, GitHub during their GitHub Octoverse, I think it's Octoverse. I think that's the name of their event. But anyways, their big event, they came out and they said a new developer joins GitHub every second. I did some math on that. It's like 86,000 developers, I think, in a day. It's multiple million in a week or a month. Do you believe this? Like what? Like how many bots is this? Because if we went back 5 years, there were, I don't know, 15 million developers or 20 million developers. They're literally saying now, like, as many developers as existed 4 or 5 years ago at what we would have said is like sort of the, one of the heights of people being like software developers are the kings. They're like, that's being added every month. What in the world are you talking about, GitHub? What in the world does this mean? I don't know. Maybe it's just is a developer anymore? What are you counting?
Well, maybe this is more the AI thing. It's like, I don't know. Like with the advent of AI and, like Cursor and all these people creating these scripts for me, like I always have Cursor like, okay, like, put all this in GitHub for me as well. So it's like, I don't know, like if you like the very loose definition of developer, someone who like either wrote a little code or watched AI write code and then was smart enough, or the AI suggested like, why don't we put this in GitHub? There's probably like a lot of like that going, but I don't think that doesn't mean like professional developer coding 40 hours a week or working on, it's like, that's obviously crazy. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. It's like, you're just, it's like you can count the numbers however you want, but we know there's just not enough people being minted that have this knowledge to be doing that. So, but whatever. I mean, it's sometimes you're just like, fine, if it makes you feel good, it's like, like everyone's putting a lot of code in GitHub. Like I don't even need a stat to know that. I'm like, yep, I believe that's happening every day.
Right. Yeah, I do wonder if there's companies now who are like going around and going, hey, we're not going to send this out as an official memo, but I need every group to just come up with the biggest number for whatever you do that you possibly. I don't care how outrageous it is, because right now the numbers like you mentioned, have T's at the end of them, so like we can just throw out any number we want, and maybe that's going to get picked up by somebody and be like, wow, they're really a thing. But yeah, so
well, you said it before. I believe there is. I was on another podcast. I was saying like I like this idea, and it's used in other podcasts, but I just call it fact check. Just the fact check podcast. Like you just give me you just tell me something, right? And I'm just going to fact check everything you say, right? So this was done in the world of sports. They did it for like fact checking the North Carolina current GM, Mike Lombardi. So I won't bore people with it, but it was a great episode because it's like, oh, a lot of this wasn't true. So the one I want to hear, the thing I saw most recently was Mark Benioff said like Salesforce had saved $100 million with AI. I'm like, okay, we're starting the podcast. I just like let's just show me the spreadsheet. Where that happened. I'm not saying you're lying. I just want to see in detail where every single dollar was saved, because it feels like a lie. It feels like we may get inside that, and we may be like very generous interpretations of like how AI was categorized in that. But there's like a million of these numbers out there.
Right. Yeah, no, I like that. Actually, I do like the idea of starting a podcast about that for tech. It might be something we have to look into. So, all right, let's. There's some other stuff in there for cloud side. Folks can go take a look at it. Both of the number 1 and number 2 clouds had an outage this month. Nobody really said much. I mean, the AWS one was probably, it was interesting. The AWS one happened and people were like, oh shit, that impacts my life. The Azure one happened and people were like, I don't know. I couldn't go to a Teams. Like it didn't. I didn't hear anybody being like, no, something stopped in my life that they.
I did want to ask you about the AWS one.
Yeah,
you're like a good person to ask, because like you've been. I mean, we're on the Cloudcast, for goodness sakes. And it's like however many years you guys have been doing this, 15, 20 years, and it's like we know we have been in enough AWS training sessions to be like, everything that happened, they have a lab that shows you, be like, if this happens, that's why you set it up this way. You have your VPC in a different region and you have this failover. And so anyway, we know like the whole AWS well-architected framework accounts for all of these issues, right? Like,
absolutely.
And so my thought is just like, is this just an indication of like, it's just too complicated? Even like the smartest people with the most money in these companies, they're not doing it. They're just like, you know what? Let's just run everything in AWS East 1 because it has all the latest stuff. And let's not bother with like putting anything on the West region or anything. Like, let's just not worry about it. Cause it's the only answer at this point. It's like, cause AWS has answers to all of these questions and no one, cause like you can kind of see like the number of sites to go down and be like, well, they're not even doing it. How would a quote regular person be doing it? Right. If these big companies aren't even doing it. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
It's just, I think it's two, maybe three things. Number one, it's the power of defaults. So, you put all the latest and greatest stuff. It's crazy thing is everyone goes, well, AWS, US1 East has all the latest and greatest. And you're like, I know, but we all know that most latest and greatest features don't get used, right? So it's still mostly compute, storage, and networking, but it's the power defaults. So it's Cote's default lifestyle has something to do with this. The other part is, for all of the best practices or, whatever they want to call it, it's like, yeah, but that's not free. That cost me something. And I have to justify to somebody that we just spent, I don't know, another third or whatever it is for all these, backup things that we have to do in test and we have to do whatever. And I just sort of trust that it hasn't happened in a long time. And then when it does happen, it comes back. And I think people are just like, they do the math in their head and they're like, okay, that's how much that would cost. That's an ongoing monthly cost, blah, blah, blah. And usually when it does go out, it comes back within 4 hours, and they probably did some math of like, what does 4 hours cost me? And
so it's just not worth it. It's not worth to do all the work, right?
I think it is. Other than like, I saw Adrian Cockcroft, from Netflix fame said like, I don't think Netflix went down. And it's like, yeah, because there are people 24/7 who are worried about, K-pop hunters or, Squid Games or whatever. Like they have to see it all the time. But yeah, I think most companies.
And to be fair, but like Netflix, like it's like a bunch of good, like it's like the best students. They did all the homework.
Yeah,
they're like, yeah, we're actually going to fix the DNS issue too, and we're actually going to put some stuff in AWS West, right? And we're gonna so maybe that's what maybe we give everyone a tip here. It's like what you should do, just put all your stuff in a different region. Don't put an AWS because that's it. Like don't do the work. This is like the cheat code. Don't do the extra work. Just pick a different region, and that way you won't be affected as much.
Yeah, because I'd have to look at the numbers. I'm sure Corey Quinn has a chart of it or something. But how much more is it to just put it in Ohio? Put it in the central region. Like the latency is probably not that much more, and the cost is probably not that much more, and the Ohio one never goes down, or
right.
or one of the other
no
ones.
one talks about it. When it does,
right.
You never hear about it. You're like, fine, whatever. So
right. So yeah, that's it. I think that's the best way to look at it.
Yeah. So the message here is like, really should it's like talking to your kids. Like, really should do the homework. But if you're gonna cheat or do the shortcut, well, here's the other answer. Just use a different region than AWS East 1.
Right.
Why not?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. It's as simple as that. Maybe we should just have a podcast. We'll have two podcasts. We'll have one about the facts, and then we'll have one that just does announcements of regions outside of US East 1. Oh, is this available there? Nope. Don't worry about it yet.
Don't worry about it. You don't even care about it. Don't even look at it. You don't need it. You don't even want that.
Doesn't exist. Don't worry about it. All right. We have to get into the all of the things. Do you want to start with NVIDIA or do you want to start with OpenAI? Because that sort of dominates our AI part of this thing. I guess we should start with OpenAI because the month was so long for them. Not only did they apparently partner with everybody, but at one point in the month, now granted, they have completely restructured their business. They are no longer a non-for-profit. Not that any of us ever were like, oh, they're a non-for-profit, but they're a not-for-profit. They went through, but at some point during the month, they launched a browser which made Google go down 8%. They launched a web browser. The market was like, holy shit. Google is screwed. They dropped them 8% that's like a big deal. And it got 1 day of run. It literally got 1 day of run, and everybody was like, "Oh, this thing sucks because it's a security nightmare."
Yeah.
And then people went, "Oh, hold on a second. Like, all it does is put basically a chatbot next to your browser while you're doing it. Google already has a chatbot like this. There's no moat for this thing." So yeah, they had an interesting month. Which part of the month do you want to start with? The part that involves money or the part that involves like capabilities?
Well, maybe we should. I think you're right. Well, you're kind of going around OpenAI. So obviously they restructured.
Yep.
And I guess the things we should talk about is like they had their developer day.
Yep. And
so, and I kind of termed this like on another podcast. I was just saying it's like this is the month where it's sort of like I think they've just kind of like leaned into like they're on the hook for basically, somehow in a few years, they're going to make $1 trillion in revenue.
Yeah.
So this was like the beginning of like, we need to do everything.
Yes.
And okay. So they launched the browser. You talked about that one. They launched the social app called Sora. It makes the videos. It's kind of like a TikTok thing.
Right.
And it had this kind of viral moment. I think it's mostly dissipated. Like everyone, I downloaded, I made it a couple of videos with my dog, and then I was like, moved on. They've said they're going to disrupt investment banking. Mm-hmm. They're training the AI on how to build investment banker stuff.
Right.
And then I think I can't even remember. And it goes, and then of course they have a whole set of enterprise tools and new API tools, and things like that. And so I think I think to tie this to the NVIDIA thing. So I watched the NVIDIA keynote this week. One, we need an editor for that thing is like, I don't even know what's going on. There's so many things in there,
right?
But I'll give Ben Thompson credit. He pulled out the nugget that I thought was useful, right? The one nugget I thought was useful was the way Jensen Huang, and I think in turn, OpenAI think about it. Like he says it, and Jensen Huang said it pretty succinctly in the 3.5 hours he was talking, was all software up to now, he said, is a tool. We've only built tools to this point. And he said something like all the software and all the things that we've built, that's basically like $1 trillion in market cap, something like that. Mm-hmm. And the thing he said, he's like, AI is about replacing the worker, right? It's about replacing the worker. And then of course, if you say like, well, everyone's going to make a lot less, or I'm going to replace all these workers, right? We're talking about tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars per person.
Right.
And I think that is like, to me, the underlying bet intention we live at, right, is like going forward, OpenAI, to make $1 trillion plus in revenue, they're going to have to find solutions that literally replace whole people or huge parts of people to make this salary. Otherwise, they're just building tools, which Jensen even kind of admits that's only like $1 trillion thing. So they're kind of tied together. Jensen is basically saying that is what AI is going to do. He's like, that is why it's so powerful. Of course, like he's just making the chips, right? So he always leaves this to like, I told you guys what to do. Right. Like, what else do you want me to like? Do I have to do it for you? And so he's looking to OpenAI and others to actually build the things that actually start to replace the worker. And that's kind of where we sit. And I think that's what we're going to see from OpenAI next year. Like they're going to go public and they're going to just continuously stream out stuff like this. Like this month it was investment banking. I can't imagine we're far away from next month. We're going to be like legal work, right? Like replacing lawyers and writing briefs. There'll be an OpenAI for legal, right? And I know companies are even doing some of this other stuff. And the next one is always like reading MRIs. And like, so the list will go on and on and on, because that is that's the only place to go find enough quote unquote revenue to get to like $1 trillion. Because if you're just selling like a Copilot thing or Chat GPT, there's only so many people are going to give you $20 a month, and you're never going to get there. So that's how I kind of think of these two as being tied together.
Yeah, no, they are absolutely tied at the hip to each other. They both, and yeah, the job of this is Jensen's is hard because he now is, as much as he's like, I have to make sure I maintain this, amazing engineering staff and this roadmap that stays, 3 steps ahead of anybody else, better than AMD, better than any research coming out of China. Like he's now stuck in the middle of being like, I don't just have to do that. I have to live in geopolitics now for the rest of my life, because
absolutely,
there is no getting out of being like, if this stuff is as important as it is to, kind of anything and everything, I am constantly going to have to live between being like, did I piss off the Chinese? Did I piss off the U.S. government? Did I piss, like he's going to live between those, not to mention he also has to live between like, Saudi Arabia and the sovereign wealth funds. And like, he's got to be sitting around. There's got to be some weird times when he's sitting around just having like a scotch or a bourbon with somebody and going like, hey man, 3 years ago, I was worth $12 billion and that seemed fucking awesome. Like that was just awesome. But now I'm worth $129 billion. And that also seems fucking awesome. But the level of stress that I have at 100, like, it's got to be through the roof versus being like, I made chips for games, man. That's all I did. It was just a bunch of kids playing games. Like, that seemed pretty cool back then. There's no way he can get out of that world. But he has done a fantastic job of convincing the world that, like, hey, as long as you just stay on the latest and greatest technology. I mean, he's pulling a John Chambers. Like, he is literally pulling from the John Chambers book of, as long as everything's on the internet, and everything will be on the internet, you just can't see it yet, but it'll all be on the internet. Like, his world just continues to expand. until somebody comes along with a cheaper thing. But you're right. On the OpenAI side of things, they're like, I'm on the hook for $1 trillion. And that $1 trillion is either going to be, making slop for the internet or replacing $13 trillion a year of worker stuff. And oh, by the way, I have to do everything. Like I literally can't just be, one feature. I have to be literally everything. And like, that's gotta be, can you imagine being the product managers inside of that being like, you promised what? Doing what? How? With how? Like that part's gotta be insane.
Well, but the part that's gotta be fun is like no idea is gonna get shut down. Like you walk in, you're like, I've been thinking about, this makes rainbows. I think this is going to replace the leprechauns. And they're like, you know what? Get on it. How long is it going to take you? I've got a couple people on that. What's next? I mean, because there can be no idea that they're not going to explore. Because like if you need this much money, like you can't afford to miss anything. You're like, I'm going to fund every crazy idea here. A couple developers, a couple product managers. Somebody call me when you hit $1 billion of revenue. Maybe you got something good.
Yeah, but think about it this way. So like put it in a different context. So like when I was at Cisco, 20 years ago, we used to have this all the time. It's like, hey, we should get into this. And then at some point you were like, yeah, but to do that, it needs to be a $1 billion market or a $500 million market. Mm-hmm. Like you couldn't have like a $50 million idea because you were like, I got to train up a new sales force. Like there's all this extra stuff that has to happen for that new thing to happen. But so so there was a lot of like, hey, wait, why did that group get their money? Like, why didn't we get, so there's always a lot of internal tensions of like, how do we do that? But to that point, you were like, yeah, but with 100 people or so, 50 people or whatever, and some stuff in the lab, like we could build this thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get the, the 2 pizza team thing that went on in Amazon for a long time. And Amazon was like, that needs a $6 million investment. That's cool. Like you can go, find 20 people, do a 2 pizza team, make your own. But you got to imagine inside of OpenAI, like there are no ideas that probably don't require, $50 million of GPUs or $100 million. Like that's the constraint they have is, it seems like they have unlimited money, but it's like they don't even have enough money to do the next feature level in ChatGPT. Like they're having to like restrict that stuff. They're having to like, hope that Texas spins up 10 new data centers for them or Saudi Arabia, like they got to find power in Memphis. Like that's going to be their ultimate problem is like every one of these people thinks like, okay, number one, I'm a PhD and everybody in my group's a PhD or a Stanford brilliant person or whatever, which is cool. But it's like the resources you need to do your next new idea, which should be a yes, is so enormous that it's like, I'm fighting with this other group to do that.
I like the way you've kind of put it. Like it's for once, it's like most companies are people constrained. They don't they won't let you just run out and hire like another 100 people. But in the case of this, it's like it's opposite. It's like they literally are compute constrained. It's like, we can hire kind of as many people as we want, even the smartest ones. But like we just only, we have to, that's where the hard decisions get made. Like we can only, and of course, everything they announce now, like even like Sora I talked about before, it's like, I don't really think it has staying power, but like think about like whatever, like 30 million people try it. It's like, that's a huge compute bill, right? And it's just like, and no one's really, and everyone's just like if everyone just does 3 or 4 videos like me, it's like, that was probably, I don't even know, like billions of dollars of spend, right?
Yeah. And you know that every group is going, all right, I'm going to spin this thing up and I'm just going to be able to attach this to ChatGPT, right? Like we have 800 million. They're all just going to want to like use the browser, right? Like they're all just going to want to use Sora, right? Or they're all going to want to use, be an investment banker, right? And it's going to be like, well, no, you don't have 800 million investment bankers. I don't think, you don't have 800 million developers. You don't have 800 million whatevers.
Right.
That's going to be the, that's sort of the internal constraints that they're dealing with, which, again, you look at the stories that are coming out of like, Facebook's AI group where they're all infighting because they're all supposed to be super smart, right? And you're like, how is that not going to happen with every product group within OpenAI, right? Like they come there thinking like, I'm going to do this thing. So yeah.
Well, I do think, you have really some good notes in here, and I think it's kind of true. And I think it's really interesting, just like incentives in history are kind of interesting guides here. It's like, one, you have this note I love here. It's like NVIDIA was worth 400 billion 3 years ago, and now it's worth 5.1 trillion. Again, can't even believe I read that out loud. No. But like you think about like what was Jensen Huang doing before? Like he was like kind of out on an island. Remember, like he would give the long keynotes and like no one was paying attention. He'd be like robots and ray tracing, and he would just have driverless cars. He'd have all this stuff. He'd be like, it's all going to happen. You're going to need these chips. And we're like, whatever, Jensen, like I'm busy over here doing something else. And then it actually does happen. Like he actually made it happen. You know, he's like, I told you that something great was coming and it came. So it's like all the reinforcement he's gotten in his career is like, it has worked out. He's like, I told you it was happening and now it's 5.1 trillion. And you can do like Sam Altman, kind of the same thing. It's like, I told people at the beginning with Elon Musk when he did this is going to be a big deal. Yeah. And now it's a big deal. So they're kind of riding on like, you know, and this is almost it's like no human being can be too right. It almost just messes up your mind, right? Where it's like, where they're riding on these things, like it has happened for them. You know what I mean? They made the bets and they happened, but now they find themselves with like even bigger bets, like the 5.1 trillion. It's like, as I believe that's the most valuable company in the world ever. I don't know, maybe Saudi Aramco is more, but like we'll just kind of write that off for a second. It's like all you can do. I mean, it's kind of back to the your life, the Cisco world. Like when you get to be number one, I mean, you can only go down. You know what I mean? Like it cannot sustain. Like it, and maybe it will be. Maybe it'll be a $10 trillion company. But at some point, like just keeping the plates spinning has got to be incredibly stressful. And I think the same thing with Sam Altman. He's like, I've made all of these promises and I believe in it. I believe it's going to happen. But I'm like, wow, like you are taking on something. Like the most factual thing we say is like, we've never seen it done at this scale. That's just a fact, right? Not saying it will or won't happen, but that's the biggest thing. And I think that's why all of us in the entire world are like, what's going to happen? And that generates all the bubble talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think in the case of Sam, I want to talk about the Sam thing real quick and OpenAI. Well, I want to talk about two things. So the Sam thing's got to be interesting because Jensen is sitting there and he's like, I am super rich. Like I can look at it, even though it's on paper, right? You can still do the rich guy thing where you can, take a loan against it, whatever. Sam's thing is like, for the longest time, I didn't have any equity in this, allegedly, right? Remember we talked about that? Like he didn't have, and he's obviously gotten some equity since then. But like he hasn't had his super, super rich guy moment yet, right? Like we don't even know how much of the, allegedly $500 billion valuation of OpenAI. So he's still sitting there as like the least rich guy in the room, but he's also got to be sitting there going like, I have the most tangible thing. Like I am Microsoft in this next generation in terms of like the software thing is always the most valuable thing. The hardware thing eventually sort of becomes whatever. So that's got to be an interesting thing. What did you take out of the new OpenAI thing and how Microsoft came out of that? I thought it was interesting that they seem to take a very short term, like I want to get my money now out of this versus a longer term. Let's be more tied to them in their model and what's going on there. Did you have any thoughts about kind of how the Microsoft piece shook out?
Yeah, I think it just kind of came out to like kind of a very boring thing, but a very corporate thing to do. It was just sort of like, well, we'll own 27% of this thing. If it is huge, if it's like the next multi-trillion dollar, it's like, well, we will have made for Microsoft a ton of money. Right. And if the models, for whatever reason, are really, really good, then at least we get them through 2032. But otherwise, they're okay just kind of letting it go. Right. I don't think they didn't lock in like what you're not seeing here is like, I believe that AGI is imminent and OpenAI is about to do it. Because if they felt that way, I think they would have structured this deal completely different, right? They would have said like, we don't want to take any of the profits. Like we just want to maintain ownership of like the AGI, an idea that models build on top of models. I think this was just sort of like a very simple thing about like, we just want to make sure that we have access to the models and, or we get a whole ton of the revenue, or really not the revenue, the equity, to compensate our shareholders, which is just, I guess, invertedly saying is like, I don't think they feel like OpenAI is on the verge of the big breakthrough. So if you're waiting for that, this would be Microsoft kind of saying, we don't see it. We don't think that's going to happen. Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it does feel like, I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think they're like, well, what businesses might we buy into? Okay, maybe it's like developer assistant stuff. Okay, I could buy Anthropic. That's going to be way less. They probably look at it and go, I don't know that I don't mind that I'm off the hook for, having to be their primary GPU provider because, oh my God, look at how much they're asking for the world. And that's a really expensive business to be in. And I don't know that we're differentiated in doing that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's interesting. It's, yeah, I mean, it does feel like to a certain extent they're sort of betting, they're just sort of hedging, but they're like, yeah, I don't necessarily believe that they are as world changing in 4 or 5 years, which is, I guess, they have like a 7-year window. They're like, I don't know. The other thing that I think it's interesting, and then we'll wrap up on this. I think it's interesting. You're saying you think they go IPO next year. I've seen some people say that may not happen until 2027. It does have to be sort of an interesting time for them because they're like, well, we've already proven that we can get tons and tons of private funding and huge valuations in the public market. Do I really want to deal with being a or in the private market? Do I want to be a public market company? And then at the same time, you're like, well, yeah, I would like to do that because then I'm going to get bought up by every, not hedge fund, but like every mutual fund. I'm going to be part of the S&P 500, and you got to be like, yeah, but what if we burst? Like, I want to do this as soon as possible. Yeah, that piece is going to be a fascinating thing. Is like, what would you price this thing at? How can anybody get access to it?
The thing I saw, people were talking like $1 trillion IPO. It's not that, again, that's crazy, Brandon. I'm like, I think it's crazy too, but like, I can also see it happening. Right. And I also think, the point is like, they've kind of made, it's just sort of like, I don't even want to say they've made their own bed. It's just sort of like a series of events have led us here. It's like, yes, they can raise a lot of money privately, but they're kind of tapping out those areas. Like there just isn't a company, there's no private equity group big enough to start to get to this point. Like at some point, like when they sort of spend all of this stuff and they build it all up, if the numbers and projections continue and they have to spend even more, the only place left is the public market that can actually, if you will, fund this, right? You can't go out and do private equity and, private financing at this level. At some point, it's just like, you got to go get investors that believe you and have like some, like probably just like divine belief, in OpenAI to drive it forward. So, it's just like I always just think people like want to debate, like, should this happen? Are we in the right place? Like, I don't know. I just feel like we are in for the ride. Like if we're at Disney World, right? We have gotten on the ride. We are on the roller coaster. We just need to enjoy it. Like there are going to be ups and downs, but there's no stopping this.
Yep. All right. Last thing on the agenda. We are now basically less than a month from Thanksgiving. As we know, Thanksgiving has now become our favorite holiday on this show. Basically because it is the time when something crazy happens and what seems to be, at least for the last couple of years, so we got 2 data points, somebody at least somewhat important is getting fired.
That's true. That's a good point. Yes.
2 years ago, it was Sam Altman got fired. He was restored to his position, but he got fired. He went on to, his since gone on to try and, build God out of AI. Pat Gelsinger, fired last year by Intel, same time. Yeah. He has now gone on to try and build God with AI. Who do you think is most in line to potentially get fired, or is also, I'm trying to build God with AI. I would think it's the guy from Anthropic because that's kind of the way they talk, but I don't know that Anthropic's firing their CEO. Who do you think is going to be, or what big thing comes out of Thanksgiving?
Man, that is such a good question. I wish I had prepared for this. I'm trying to think, like, who are like even companies that would like, that are even on I guess like who's the most perilous place? Like maybe Benioff. Like I feel like Salesforce is like, he's been getting himself in trouble. Like I said some political stuff that people don't like, and I don't know. That's a real stretch. I don't know. I don't have like a really good one. I guess if I had to say that, I don't know. Sam Altman is just always a wild card. Like, I don't know if we can have like repeat contestants, but like, when in doubt, just bet on him. It's like something crazy. Another month, like anything could happen between now and then. So I guess I had to pick maybe Altman or Benioff. Like, who do you think? Well, do you have any guesses?
No, I don't know. I don't know how much control. I feel like the people who might be, it's definitely not Jensen, but could it be Larry? Could it be Larry Ellison? I feel like he's still got too much control over Oracle. Mm-hmm. You need somebody who, is, I'm trying to figure out.
I can see the new Intel CEO being forced out and
but I don't
them
think
doing something out. It won't be that exciting because that's kind of already happened.
Right. You could, they talk about Trump's kid maybe taking over TikTok. Like that might be interesting, but I don't know. That's really going to be the thing. I don't know. Yeah, but I'm excited about it. Like we said, if you are planning to do something crazy, feel free to want to jump on the show. We still got a few slots available for the rest of the year if you want to come on and be an interview on the Cloudcast. So, but I'm excited about that. And then also I'm excited. I threw out a thing on on the Software Defined Talk Slack. OpenAI has a lot of cash available to them, and the Super Bowl is coming up. I think we need to start making some bets. There needs to be some sort of thing. What is the OpenAI Super Bowl commercial going to be? And hopefully,
yeah, that's interesting. What celebrity did they have in there? Because I've seen their commercials come up. They're just
they stink.
The ones I see now are kind of boring. They're fine, who will be their Matt Damon? Right? That was the crypto one,
right?
So yeah, that's a good question. Maybe the Larry David's done one. Matt Damon. Yeah, that's a good question. We need to brainstorm. Maybe we need to send them our ideas, our creative ideas, to see what they're going to do for OpenAI.
Maybe it's like Joe Rogan or somebody like that. He big enough, could make enough noise. Dave Portnoy, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know. We should just throw it out. Well, we're always available if they want us to come on and do some guest spots.
Yeah.
Why not? We're happy to help.
All right, man. Good stuff. We've gone 48 minutes. I think that's enough for people. Like I said, it could have gone 2 hours, but good job today. Good job by you. Good job by keeping your voice through all of it. Lots of good hot takes. Folks, hope you have a good Halloween, and we are looking forward to Thanksgiving coming up next month. So with that, we'll wrap it up. We'll talk to you next month.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.